8:41. Welcome back to CW Iowa Live. Lou and Jackie here.
Good morning, and giving you some great advice this morning, especially when it comes to bankruptcy. Of course, we have Mike Jankins joining us in studio, and we're talking about something called exempt property. Basically, things you're able to keep if you are going through bankruptcy, correct?
That's right.
What of my stuff can I hang on to?
Right.
Well, that tends to be the #1 question when people are even thinking about this, because if they're going to get rid of their debts, they don't want to get rid of their property as well, so they want to know, what can I keep? And for most people, it's most of everything. So,
oh, really?
So
that's what they both say.
Well, I was going to say, most people think if you're filing for bankruptcy, you have to give up everything.
Yeah, and I'll clarify that, and we'll say the things that you actually have paid for. So there's not any free houses or free cars on the deal. You get to keep them as long as you pay for them if you want to keep them.
Okay.
But #1 on the list of things that you can keep in everybody's mind is your home. So as I mentioned, you still have to pay for it. So if you just bought your house for $100,000, you can't say, oh, I filed bankruptcy and I got a house out of it. You still have to pay the house. But if you've been living there for 10 or 15 years and you've built up $50,000 of equity, well, you get to protect the equity in your home.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And there are some exceptions to that in Iowa. We have an unlimited homestead exemption, so if you've got $1 million of equity that you've accumulated over years and years because it was an expensive house, you can keep it. The exception is if when you're filing your bankruptcy, if the debts that you've got in your bankruptcy, if any of them existed before buying the house, then you can't get out from those debts. Well, the court can require you to pay at least the amount that you owe on those debts to save your house.
Okay.
And there's a few more details about that as well that we can deal with at a different time.
Right.
So
but,
in other words, if you had these debts and then you acquired the home and you took on that additional responsibility, these debts
you might be penalized for that.
Right.
Okay. What else are we able to hold on to?
Well, another kind of a big thing to go with the house is people kind of like to go back and forth to work, so your car.
Yeah.
Now, again, there's some conditions with the car. You got cars and then you got cars. So, yeah, you can keep your Ford Escort or your 2010 Toyota Camry.
What about my Corvette?
But Lou's Corvette might be a big question, unless, of course, it's a 1985 that's got a few dings in it, and then he might be able to keep that. So there's value limitations. So $7,000 is the value you can protect on a motor vehicle.
Okay.
And value is kind of a very subjective thing. It doesn't mean the NADA retail value. It's essentially, you know, what's that car worth if somebody else was going to buy it from you. And so, you know, you can have a pretty nice car for $7,000 of value, and most people have loans against their cars. So again, it's the equity in your car. So if you've got a $20,000 car and you owe $14,000 against it, well, you've got $6,000 of value you've built up. That's what's protected.
Okay.
Okay.
And so each person gets to protect the car. So if you got a husband and a wife, they each get to protect one. So 2 cars. The only kind of kink in the armor on that one is your name sort of has to be on the car title. We see quite often that with husbands and wives, for reasons that I really don't understand, all the vehicles seem to be in one person's name. And I don't know why they're not in both people's names, but they must have their own rationale. It's one I don't understand. And if your name isn't on the car and you file bankruptcy, well, you won't be keeping 2.
It's no longer yours.
So hopefully it's not a very nice car, because the bankruptcy trustees, when they evaluate these things, aren't particularly interested in some old clunker that needs to get towed away.
Now, is this something you can rectify before you file bankruptcy?
No, you really can't, because you can't be changing titles and ownership and things just prior to the bankruptcy, because that doesn't really hold up.
Okay.
So it's not a real good strategy. It's not
kind of sending up red flags.
Because you have to disclose that you all of a sudden added somebody's name onto it, or transfer it. It's kind of a transfer, so it doesn't really work out. It's not going to save it, because you got to disclose what you've done, and that sort of defeats the whole thing.
Got it.
And you become a one-car family again.
Okay, so let's say we've kept our house. What about things that are in the house?
Well, it's kind of nice to keep the bed. Something to sleep on the floor gets kind of hard sometimes. The sofa, the TVs, the pictures on the wall. So your general household belongings, the refrigerator, the stove, all your electronical stuff. So you get to keep those things. Again, as in most of the things in bankruptcy, there's a limit. You can't have tons of high-end Ultra HD 70-inch wall TVs that are worth $10,000, but each person can keep up to $7,000 of value on their household belongings. So husband and wife, $14,000.
Now, would computers fall into that
Sure,
arena as well?
Computers, they're household staples anymore.
Okay.
And so we're talking about, again, what a person could get selling their stuff. Well, most of the people that have household goods, when they sell the stuff, have garage sales and yard sales. That's the most common way people sell their belongings. And I don't know if you've been to any recently. It's been a long time since I went to those, but things went for pretty small prices, and I'm sure they still do. And so we generally almost have no clients that have any concerns on the value that they've got on their household goods. We actually make our clients fill out an inventory form that we've used for decades to account for their stuff, rather than just making up some value. Go, yep, all my stuff's for $3,000. How'd you get this? I don't know, I just thought.
$3,000, yeah.
Right, so we have them itemize it out. You know, once and maybe every 5 years, we'll actually get somebody that asks in the case, well, how did you get the number? And then we pull out this 4-page inventory form and go, have at it there. It's all detailed out,
right.
And so it works great. So people don't have to be alarmed about their household belongings.
All right, what about the clothes on our back?
The clothes on your back are pretty well protected. Now, Jackie, your closet full of shoes, you may have too many of them, I don't know.
You might have too many, uh-oh.
But generally speaking, we don't attribute much value to people's wardrobe.
Okay.
That stuff just isn't really worth much. I've never heard a bankruptcy trustee want to take over somebody's stuff. So you get $1,000 of value per person on that, and that's pretty easy to make.
Okay.
Your wedding rings, those are pretty much protected. So if you really had a good-hearted husband and he got you some $10,000 ring, well, that's protected, just as well as the person that didn't have much and got a $100 ring. So there's no limit on the wedding ring.
Okay.
Life insurance, kind of a valuable thing. Whole life, you can protect up to $10,000 accumulated within 2 years of bankruptcy. And if you've had the policy a long time, there's no limit to the value. You just can't up it by more than $10,000 within 2 years of your bankruptcy. It's a good planning device for bankruptcy when we have to convert other assets.
Okay.
You get a wild card exemption. It's $1,000. It's $1,000 of value you can apply to anything.
Okay.
Either something that you want to up the value, something that wasn't protected, or just money in the bank. So if you got a husband and wife, you can protect a couple $1,000 in cash with that protection. Workers' compensation claims, if you get hurt at work, those claims are protected regardless of what kind of value they may have. In the same regard, we have a protection for personal injury claims. There's a little bit of a qualifying language in there. It says, to the extent reasonably necessary for the debtor's support or the dependents. That really hasn't been flushed out since they gave us that statute, which I think's been around for probably at least 10 years now. There's just not really been anything where it's been interpreted. Fortunately, all my clients have been able to keep their injury claims without any issues up to this point, and we hope it stays that way.
What about things I've invested in, like a 401k?
Your retirement accounts, all the traditional employer-sponsored retirements, those are all protected no matter what, as well as IRA accounts. So those get the same type of protection.
What about tax returns?
You get your tax refunds. We've talked about those many times before, $1,000 per person at the time you are waiting for your refund money come February or March of the tax year that we're talking about.
And if you're a business owner and you have some of those items around?
Well, your tools of your trade, your equipment, you can still stay in business even if you file bankruptcy to make a living. So you can protect $10,000 worth of equipment and tools. Those are based on what we would also kind of say auction values. Sometimes we'll actually hire an auctioneer, somebody that liquidates these things on a regular basis, just to make sure that if somebody does have quite a bit of stuff, that they have a basis, because it'll be called into question. And then if you got a husband and wife operating something, well, you get $20,000, and that becomes kind of useful, like in farming couples and things too.
That. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
So husband and wives that are in business together get double the exemption, so you can protect quite a bit of equipment if it's kind of older and used versus brand new stuff that you're usually paying loans on those anyway.
Absolutely. Okay. Anything unusual that we're able to keep that many people might not think about?
Life insurance, you can protect if someone dies and you're going to be entitled to get proceeds. If you're the beneficiary, you get the first $15,000 out of it. And if they've died before the filing and you just got the money recently, you can protect the cash. If somebody dies within 6 months of the bankruptcy, we've spoken before that you could lose your inheritance. But if it's life insurance and it's 15 or under, you can protect the $15,000.
Okay, so you have that.
So that's kind of an unusual one that doesn't come up often, but when it does, it's kind of nice to know.
But there's something else that's a little unusual too that people may not have thought about that is also protected, that they might have in the closet somewhere or maybe in a safe somewhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, you get to protect the gun, not a handgun. You can't get that .357 Magnum that Dirty Harry uses, but
so you can protect a gun.
One shot, two.
Two shotguns.
One shotgun and one
Seriously?
rifle.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I think each kill's probably equally the same.
Oh my goodness. So basically a lot of rules and things to know
Wow.
when it goes to filing bankruptcy, especially when people are concerned about what they're able to keep. Thank you for breaking it down for us this morning. If people have more details or questions they want to learn from you, Mike, where should they go?
You can call me at 255-1855 and we'll be happy to answer your questions. You can find us on the internet at www.iowa-bankruptcylaw.com, or you can follow us on Facebook.
That
Okay.
works. Well, thank you, Michael. Appreciate that. I'll tell you a whole list of stuff you can keep when you file your bankruptcy. We will be